rate of constant decay. The progressive decrement of D is known as constant decay. The gradual decrease will give us the chance to monitor the effects of each decrement on the network and to make adjustments where necessary. As the parameter decreases, more stake pools will also be able to make blocks, since the number of blocks that are made by the pools will increase and less stake will then be required for each block that is made. The key factors driving this decrease will be the resilience and reliability of the network as a whole, the number of effective block producing pools, the amount of the total stake that has been delegated. Here's our current thinking on what implementation might look like. So he's saying, here's what our current thinking on what the implementation might look like. Okay, so that, at the time of the writing was what they're planning. This obviously, this language here says this is subject to change. Okay, if everything goes as they're hoping, so this is sort of I guess the best case scenario. If there's any problems, then they may slow things down even more than what they plan to. And let's hope that that doesn't happen. So let's just look at this figure. So epochs 208 through 210 are already passed, or they're in gray. Okay, so it starts here July 29th. That was when the blockchain transitioned into the Shelley era. And so there were 0% of the blocks were produced by pools through these first three epochs of the Shelley era, all produced by the Byron era nodes. So now currently we're in epoch 211. That started on August 13th. Currently it's August the 17th. And D equals 0.9. So it's 10% by the pools, 90% by the old Byron era nodes. Okay, so as I just was telling you before, epoch 212, which starts tomorrow, August the 18th, D will be marched down by 0.1 and will be at 20% block production by the stake pools, which is great. There'll be twice as many opportunities for your favorite pool to produce a block. And so any of the pools that were unlucky in epoch 211, didn't get a chance to produce a block, they'll have more opportunities for that to happen in epoch 212. So that's a great thing. And again, no performance penalties in this range. Once we get down here to epoch 213, then Daedalus will start to impose the performance penalty in the rankings. And I assume the ranking will then cease to become random at that point once we get into epoch 213. Or that may not happen until we get to epoch 214, because they'll have to get the data from epoch 213, which will then be updated in epoch 214. So you probably won't see an end to the random ordering of the pools until we get down here at the very end of the month. Again, like I was saying, it's going to drop down by 0.02. So we go from 0.8 to 0.78, then 0.76, and you can see, correspondingly that the amount of blocks that the pools are producing is going to start creeping up after that. And then there's this interval here, epochs 215 to, whenever, beginning on September the 6th, where D will be from 0.74 to 0.52. And then we'll reach, as long as this schedule remains on track, we'll reach epoch 228 on November the 1st, where D will equal 0.5. And then there's nothing beyond that here on this schedule. Why? Well, because they have to wait for the peer-to-peer protocol and the on-chain governance to be activated. And maybe it'll be done by this point. Maybe it'll take a little bit longer. It's too hard to say, and so it'd be foolish to commit to any kind of schedule beyond this point. So we have a pretty good roadmap, at least through the end of October here, and then I assume by the time we get close to this date, the picture for where we'll go beyond this point will be much clearer. So moving on here in the article, we will then likely pause before dropping the parameter below 0.5 to ensure that the two key conditions described above are met. The implementation of the peer-to-peer discovery mechanism, that has to be successfully in use, and we have successfully transitioned the first hard fork in the Shelley area, which will introduce the basis for community voting on protocol parameters and other important protocol changes. We will resume the countdown to d equals 0 at a similar rate, so probably 0.02, pausing again if necessary before finally transitioning to d equals 0 in March of 2021. Okay, so they kind of have the checkered flag here set for March 2021. Again, that's the current thinking, certainly subject to change. Other factors that affect decentralization: saturation threshold. A second parameter, K, we'll talk about that here in a moment, is used to drive growth in the number of pools by encouraging delegators to spread their stake. By setting a cap on the amount of stake that earns rewards, the saturation threshold, new delegators are directed towards pools that have less stake. In ideal conditions, the network will stabilize towards the specific number of pools that have been targeted. In practice, we saw from the incentivized testnet that many more pools than this number were supported by the setting that we chose. The K parameter was set to 150, so that means that the optimal number of stake pools would be 150. So, let's read on. Was set to 150 at the Shelley hard fork. This setting was chosen to balance the need to support a significant number of stake pools from the start of the Shelley era against the possibility that only a small number of effective pools would be set up by the community. Okay, so they're saying, well, we kind of expected that, there's going to be a lot of people trying to set up pools, but, they may screw it up. So, we're going to keep that number low at first. In due course, it will be increased to reflect the substantial number of pools that emerged in the Cardano ecosystem since the hard fork. Okay, so this K parameter is currently at 150. It's at 150 right now. That means that all of the stake could be theoretically jammed into 150 stake pools. In other words, I have to get ahead of the article and maybe ahead of myself a little bit here, in that one of the aspects of the Cardano protocol is that so that one pool doesn't amass all of the stake, the rewards are capped beyond a certain point. So if you get above sort of like a saturation limit of stake, you're going to stop getting rewards. And that prevents one pool from getting all of the stake. And then, this process that we're moving towards decentralization suddenly becomes centralized again because one of the stake pools sucks up all of the stake. Okay, so, we don't want to have a monopoly. We don't want to have, even a cartel, okay, of stake pools that are controlling the Cardano system. We want it truly to be decentralized. That's what they're saying. They want it truly, I as a stake pool operator want it to be decentralized also. I want to have a say in, what decisions are being made about my money. And I'm sure you do too. The K parameter was set to 150. So essentially the idea here is that if you take the total amount of stake and you divide it by 150, then that gives you what that saturation limit is. So theoretically, 150 pools could suck up all of the stake available, and all the other pools could have nothing, because of that saturation limit. They're going to increase this number. They haven't. It doesn't seem like they have any kind of schedule for when they're going to increase that, but they'll increase that. That will then obviously lower the saturation limit, because if they go from like 150 to 300 and double the number of optimal pools, then that saturation limit will be divided by 2. Because then theoretically at that point, 300 pools, you could jam all of the stake into 300 pools. And the saturation limit is there to prevent a pool from getting more than 1/300th, or at this point 1/150th of all of the stake that's available. Okay, so it takes some time to think about these things. This will spread stake, and so block protection among more pools. Fine. The overall goal in choosing the setting of the parameter will be to maximize the number of sustainable pools that the network can support, so creating a balanced ecosystem. Why do you want to start out with a low number of these at first? Well, if there's a number of pools that are not set up properly at these beginning stages, and you have a large number of K, well, what that means is that's going to spread out the number of blocks, the block production to pools that may miss the block because they're configured incorrectly. And if the pools start missing blocks, there's going to be holes in the blockchain. Other pools will have to have to pick up the slack, and if you poke too many holes in that, it might create some other problem where the whole system might come to a halt. So again, they're taking a very conservative approach there. But I think the idea there is not to keep it at 150. I certainly hope that these parameters, like K, for example, don't ossify at their current levels, but they remain flexible, and that there is a pressure. Certainly the community as a whole needs to keep that pressure up for this number to increase. And that will bring in more pools. Where are we? Okay. In order to achieve this, a careful balance is required between opening up the opportunity to run a block creating pool to as many pools as want to run the system against the raw economics of running a pool, from bare metal servers to cloud servers to people's time, taking into account the rewards that can be earned from the actively delegated stake. Changing this parameter will therefore be done with a degree of caution and balance so that we ensure the long-term success of a fully decentralized Cardano network. We're now looking carefully at early pool data and doing some further modeling before making the next move. So they're reviewing the situation. The situation.
I'm a bad un, and the bad un I shall stay.
What is he saying here? Well, obviously, if you just take K and you rail it to some high number, like 1,000, you are going to dilute the, you're going to lower, that saturation threshold so low that, you may get to the point where it's just not financially sustainable to operate the node, because the amount of rewards that you can earn will be so small, and the rewards will be distributed amongst so many hundreds upon hundreds or even thousands of stake pools that no one can really earn enough money from running a stake pool to be bothered to continue doing it. So everyone just turns them off, and that's it. So there's danger on one side. There's a trade-off. So in this continuum of K being small or K being large, there's trouble on either side. You can get into the gutter on either side of the road. When K equals small, you can have a cartel, right, of pools where you achieve centralization again, because this small number of pools is controlling all of the block production. The danger on the high side of K is that you just make K so big that it's not financially sustainable to run any block, any stake pool, and so people just give up running it. So you want it to be, there's certainly a very large and healthy area between those two extremes where K can find a happy spot, so that we can achieve the goal of decentralization, but also it's still financially rewarding, and there's this financial incentive to run a stake pool. So that's what that's talking about.